I'd like to show you why knowing your why is the start of your journey. Without a strong why, it can be so difficult to reach your maximum potential. My name is Dr. Jason Balara, and every week I meet with real estate investors and mindset specialists that are taking action in order to build a life according to their own terms. We will break down what drives successful people and allows them to achieve at such a high level. If you are a professional wanting to break through, or simply someone that wants to hear an inspiring story, the Know Your Why podcast is made for you.
Hi everyone, I'm Jason Balara and this is the Know Your Why podcast. Today I'm here with Willie Mandrell and Heidy Barrero. They are real estate investors in Boston, and which is, as I mentioned before we started recording, exciting to me because that's my hometown. So I'm excited for this conversation. Thank you both for coming on today.
Oh, we appreciate you having us.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Well, why don't we start? Maybe you can tell us sort of how you got started in real estate, give us a little bit about your background, and kind of then we'll go from there.
Yeah.
Okay,
Willie, you want to go first?
I'll let you go first. That's fine.
Okay. Background in real estate. I'll turn it back to 2 years ago. I was in banking before doing real estate. Met Willie at the time. Reach out to him and we had coffee, became more interested in the business. And from there on, we just stayed connected, started working for him as an intern. And as time progressed and I learned more about the business, I became more just involved and decided to quit my full-time job at the bank. And now I'm in real estate full-time.
Yeah, so same with me. I started off in banking and financial services a little bit longer ago. But I went to school for business finance, got out, started working for Citizens Bank, Bank of America, a couple of local, branches. I wasn't good at balancing my cash draw, so I was told to go find something else to do. And I got my series license, my Series 6, 63, and got into financial services, learned about, kind of investment services and stuff like that. And then, 2008 stock market crash, housing market crash, I had to figure out what I wanted to do. And real estate was always a passion of mine. So I decided I think it was around 2010, just to hop in full time, and I've been full-time investor, realtor, broker, ever since.
Okay, awesome. So how did you, how did your portfolio get started? What does it look like today? What's your lane in real estate? Sounds like you've got a couple if you're acting as a broker as well.
Yeah, so buy and hold is what we focus on. As your listeners are probably well aware, there are many ways to invest in real estate. I mean, there's everything from tax liens to flipping to there's all types of wholesaling is everything. But our focus, our niche is buying hold. So 2000, right from the very beginning, buying small residential properties here in Boston. It's 2 to 3 to 4 unit buildings is probably our niche. Going in, initially it was just buying them rent-ready properties, holding on to them, renting them out. And then today we focus more on distressed properties where we're going in, buying things that need a significant amount of work. Roof is leaking, heating systems are bad. As you're well aware from Boston, bad heating system is, a distressed property. Windows are drafty, everything else, no insulation. We go in, fix them up, create some value, or create some equity for ourselves, and then rent them out. So it's essentially the BRRRR strategy that I'm pretty sure a lot of your listeners are familiar with.
Yeah, and I guess for people that maybe don't know kind of what the Northeast is like in terms of real estate, I mean it's old buildings. There, as you mentioned, it's a lot of 2, 3, 4 building type, stacked multifamily units. I guess there are some side by side type things, but yeah, it's old systems, as you said, no insulation in the walls. I've seen all of that. There's a lot of lead paint, all of those things to deal with. So yeah, I think there's probably not a shortage of those types of deals that need that fixing, that need that sort of value add process. So what, and maybe Heidy, maybe this is a question for you, but what are you doing to find them?
Oh, we're doing a lot. We're going from sending postcards, cold calling, going on sites. We go to a lot of auctions on site as well. Been using PropStream, MLS. It's a lot of activity in order for us to find those unicorns, like Willie called them.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure it's in today's market, it's probably not as people realize that people will pay for that, even for that distressed asset. So it's probably a little bit harder to kind of nail those down. So maybe walk us through a little bit like the process. So you're find a deal. What are you doing, to get it under contract? What is your process in terms of, kind of from start to finish on that BRRRR strategy?
Yeah, I mean, every deal is different, but one of the things that we try to focus on primarily is understanding the seller's motivation to sell or their financial need, right? It's the number, it's closing quickly so that they can have cash at hand. So after finding the deal, communicating with the agent and just understanding their reasoning has helped us a lot getting it to the closing table, more than anything else, more than the number itself. The majority of the owners, they're self-aware that their property, it's in the condition that it's in, therefore it won't be at value as a already renovated home. So explaining that to them and explaining why it's worth what it's worth or what we believe is worth that much, it's has helped us more. But having a conversation, it's
I second that. I agree. I think just understanding where the seller is coming from is probably the biggest thing. As you mentioned, Jason, there's no shortage of inventory in terms of old stock of homes, but there's a lot of competition in Boston as well. It's a high price market. There's a lot of money to be made. So we're competing out there with a lot of other investors, developers. But to piggyback on what Heidy said, it's just understanding the seller's motivation, I think, is the biggest thing, and then catering our offer to what they're looking for, right? I mean, if they're, believe it or not, you would think that everybody would want the highest price, but some people are like, hey, I'm less concerned about price. I'm more concerned about getting my this thing sold in the next 2 weeks before the foreclosure auction hits, or the reverse. Some people are kind of like, I can get my money in 60 days, but I want to make sure that the number that I walk away with is the highest number that I think that I can achieve. Or it's, I don't have the money to do a smoke inspection. Will you cover the smoke inspection for me, or will you waive the inspection altogether? Or you take it as take it as is. There are a variety of different concerns that the seller has, and we try to, whether we're talking directly to the seller or their agent or a wholesaler or whoever, just try to find out as much as we can about their motivation, and then cater our offer to that to those terms, I guess, is the idea.
Yeah. And so do you find that if you're able to get that much sort of detail on what the seller needs, what they're really trying to get from this, are you finding most of your deals off market? That I guess the point of my question is, I feel like when there's a broker involved, a lot of times that you're not necessarily speaking directly to the seller. So how are you kind of navigating that?
Go ahead, Heidy.
I was just going to give a good example. One of our recent projects in Weymouth, Fuller Road, that was a transaction with an agent, and it was challenging at first getting in communication with him, but we managed to, one, learn a little bit about him, right? And this was on REO property, right? So there was no, if I'm not mistaken, I just want to make sure I'm providing the right information.
No, it was, yeah.
REO.
Yep.
That was a bad example because this doesn't involve an owner, but getting to know honestly, it's just getting to know the agents, getting to know also understanding how they work and how they operate, and making it seem like, or letting them know that, hey, we're on the same team. You're trying to get your client the best number, the best offer, and we're trying to also help you get to that point. It is tough, yes, understanding the seller's motivation when it comes from the agent, but working collectively, and that's, I don't know, it hasn't been hard at all. I'm having a hard time answering that question because we haven't had a lot of challenges when it comes to working with other agents. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'd say that one, agents tend to be, I think, to give you a little more feedback, I think it's a communication thing. I think our biggest challenge, I think, is agents are, at the end of the day, there's no, and this is, I don't want to sound, condescending, like I'm talking down to anybody, but there's no like communication class that you need to take or anything like that to become a real estate agent, right? I mean, anybody that, anybody and their mother has their real estate license nowadays, and everybody's acting as an agent. So there's a certain level of professionalism or lack of professionalism that we sometimes have to kind of break through with certain agents. Poor communication skills on their end, the lack of knowledge when it comes to working with investors. What can we offer? What does a cash offer mean? What does no contingencies mean? So sometimes I think, Heidi's biggest obstacle is educating other real estate agents about what we can do, how quickly we can do it, and kind of navigating that. And then sometimes it's just getting a hold of them. I mean, that's the biggest thing. I'm always bugging her about, hey, can we go see whatchamacallit? And she's like, well, guy hasn't answered his phone yet. So I think that's the biggest thing, is just, breaking through that lack of professionalism sometimes on the other end, that can come with, dealing with real estate agents and dealing with sellers as well. We just had a deal where we sat down with the seller, personally gave him exactly what he wanted. And then 2 days later, he decided he didn't want that and kind of blew the deal up. So, it can be tough. It depends on how you look at it. We wake up every day wanting, to go after it. I mean, if you're kind of coming at this, nonchalantly, then yeah, it's going to be tough. But if you really want to go after it, I think, like Heidy mentioned, I think, most people can do it. It's just, do you want to do it or not? So.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's a great point, and probably applies to life in general, but also, sort of anywhere in anything you're trying to achieve, right? It's like, it's ultimately going to be a numbers game. So you're going to have some of these difficult conversations. You're going to have some of these difficult brokers or sellers or whatever it is, but ultimately you're just trying to get in front of as many as possible, weed out the good deals, and then go after it, and just, make your best, and keeping it not, keeping it objective and not emotional, and just, hey, these are where our numbers have to be at. And your point about, the realtors or the brokers not knowing necessarily how to interact with real estate investors versus like a retail buyer, and that is a different
Right.
type of conversation. So I think all those things are maybe things that people aren't familiar with. So once you sort of once you get something under contract and you're going through your process on these value add deals, what kinds of things are you looking at? Are you sort of vertically integrated in managing all of that construction yourself? How are you doing that?
Yeah, so there's kind of three divisions to our company. It's the acquisition side, the development side, and then the management side. So we kind of do all of it in-house. Obviously, Heidy is our acquisitions lead. And then we have a gentleman who is responsible for our development team. So once she puts it under contract, my primary focus is getting it financed and getting it in-house. We hand it over to the development team, and their focus is, whether it's all going to be, there's going to be three different types of projects that we do. One is kind of a simple cosmetic renovation, a gut renovation, which means we're taking everything down to the studs, we're taking everything out, plumbing, electrical, and starting all over. And then a new construction project where we're basically going in and building up, things from the ground up. So depending on what project is coming down the pipeline, that development team will take it and either start, go getting permitting for a new construction, or, tearing things apart or tearing out cabinets if it's just a cosmetic rehab. And then from there, working directly with our management team to say, okay, that we are, 30 days from completion, 2 weeks from completion, let's start getting the photographer in, let's start getting a stager in, getting the marketing together, and then handing it off to our management team, where they take it, lease it up, and where it is held today.
You mentioned financing, getting that. How are you doing that? And I think that's an important thing for people to understand in terms of people that are operating at scale in real estate investing.
Yeah, so that's one of the biggest things about scale is, like I said, the more you learn about financing, the more you understand about it is, I mean, that's a necessity to scaling any real estate portfolio. I think in the beginning, most investors are going in, they're buying their first property with some type of FHA, or here in Boston, it might be a mass housing loan, little 3.5% or 3% down, even 5% down for those first couple purchases. You can kind of finagle, things. I think, for me, I had 10 units before I had to learn how to get creative with financing. But for the most part, the BRRRR strategy, I can give you a simple, idea is, let's say, our perfect transaction is we're buying something at roughly 600,000, or let's call it 650,000. We're putting, let's call it another 200,000 into it. So we're buying it at six, putting $200,000 into it. It's at 8. We're all in at 8, and it's worth $1 million when it's all said and done. If we can find those assets, and that's what Heidy's focus was, in finding those distressed assets like that with that type of after repair value or ARV, we can create some significant value. So what we'd most likely do is try to close quickly, try to get in, use hard money. For those of you not familiar, hard money is just kind of a loan that is based on the property itself. Credit scores less of an issue. Your assets are less of an issue. They're hard money lenders are looking at the property itself. We'll finance it with hard money, do the renovation, create the value. Again, buying it at 6, putting 2 into it. We're into it for 850. It might be worth $1 million, a little bit over. And now we're going back to a commercial lender, someone who, the only difference between a commercial lender and a residential lender, residential, you're buying the property in your own name. Commercial lending, you're buying the property in some type of other entity, an LLC or some type of other structure. We put all of our properties into LLCs, go to a commercial lender, and refinance the hard money out into a traditional long-term loan. And hopefully that makes sense. It's kind of a 3-step process: going in, buying with hard money, renovating the process, going back to a long-term commercial lender and saying, hey, we have an asset now that's worth $1 million or a little bit more. We only owe this hard money lender $800,000 on it. You have a nice 80-20 loan to value, or a nice spread there. And that commercial lender should say, yeah, I have an asset on my books that's worth $1 million. They only are asking for a loan of $800,000. This should be a pretty easy deal to do. We'll take the proceeds from that new commercial lender, pay off the hard money lender. And now we essentially just bought a property with no money out of our pocket, and we stand with $200,000 in equity on the back end of it as well.
Yeah, that's great. And so I've heard sort of this before, and maybe because we're on this topic, you can clarify, but my understanding has always been, or we hear this a lot anyway, is that, from a lending standpoint, a commercial property is anything greater than 5 units. So if you're doing, 2, 3, 4 unit buildings in Boston, that you're still able to kind of go to a commercial lender. You don't have an issue with that. I guess it's maybe there's not a real clarification. Maybe I was just wrong on that.
No, that's the if you're a real estate agent, typically you're right in the sense that, like I said, from a sales standpoint, you as an individual can't go and buy a 5-unit building with a residential loan, right? You can't. That's just not. They're going to say you're an investor at that point. You can buy up to 4 units. After that, you're residential. You're commercial, and you won't be able to do that. But commercial lenders don't necessarily look at. They don't necessarily say that you have to have more than 4 units or you have to be residential. Commercial lenders will lend on a single family, which I'm in the process of doing right now, as long as it's held in a separate LLC, as long as it's held in a separate entity. The biggest thing is commercial lenders are not going to touch you if you are personally living there. That's number one. You can't occupy the property, and it can't be in your own personal name. It needs to be in the name of an entity, like an LLC or a corporation or something like that. As long as those 2 things are met, you're buying in an entity and you're not living there, you can buy a single, a double, a triple, and anything, in between. It doesn't really matter. But you're right in the sense that the majority of commercial lenders are focused on 5 units or above, which would be the case in another, city. But here in Boston, a typical single family is $600,000 to $700,000. Dollars. So, a commercial lender would, play in that space all day long as long as you're meeting that, those entity requirements.
Okay. Yeah. And I guess I'm sure part of it has to do with just the actual dollar value of the properties too, right? I don't imagine
Exactly.
commercial lenders are going to get into, if you're someplace where you can buy a single family for 150,000, that may not be something where you're going to have those same options. So I think the cost of real estate in the Boston area probably impacts that sort of discussion. And so you said you also have a management arm. So you're essentially, from start to finish taking care of these. What does your people talk about, the right markets to invest in, and here are the landlord friendly things and stuff like that. And so, certainly Boston's not on that list of landlord friendly places to invest, but maybe you can speak to how do you feel about that? There is rent control in areas of Boston. I know, and maybe enlighten us on some of those rules and how you kind of navigate that.
Like I said, I've been here. I mean, there's always been talks of, even before I became a real estate investor, there were talks about rent control. There, a new mayor in place, and there are more talks about rent control. At the end of the day, this is my personal opinion. I'll let Heidy speak to it as well. But, I feel like Boston's always going to be a great place because people want to be here at the end of the day. There's no shortage. We have some of the best hospitals in the world, some of the best schools in the world. People come from all over to go to Northeastern University, Suffolk University, BU, BC, Harvard, MIT are both here. People are coming from all over the world to go to these institutions, and a lot of times they don't leave once they come. And those schools are only getting bigger. With them getting bigger, they need more housing, student housing, and it's just we have the infrastructure, the economy in place. And even with, rent control, I don't want to concern myself with politics and things that may or may not happen in the future. We'll, like I said, if they happen, then we'll, kind of deal with them and, as they go. But I'll let Heidy tell you, like her opinion about, the city and, and what she thinks here.
Yeah, I second everything you said. I think it's just another challenge similarly to COVID. We just have to adapt and work around what's going on. The labor costs and material costs will still be there. It might go higher, it might go lower. We just have to adjust in how we approach these properties, and are we going to pay less or more? And at the end of the day, if the numbers make sense, regardless of what's regulations out there, we just have to adjust.
I agree. Yeah, it's just making adjustments in the market based on the environment. Like I said, at the end of the day, the demand is still going to be here. People want to be here, and like I said, we have a shortage of housing already. So
yeah, it's as someone from Boston, I everything you said there, is reigns true. It's just, I think people maybe outside of Boston, I don't know, maybe don't necessarily think of, well, they think of the Red Sox or something, they think of Boston as a sports town, which it is, and I love my teams, but there's so much more there, right? All the stuff you mentioned. There's I forget what's it, like 600 colleges or something like that in Greater Boston. There is a ton of stuff going on. There's a lot of culture. There's a lot of reason that people go there, and as you mentioned, people stay. So it's kind of the draw will probably, I don't think it'll ever go away. I think the same thing, you brought up COVID, Heidy, the same thing with like New York City. It's like people outside of those cities are like, oh man, COVID's going to ruin those cities. Like, people aren't going to stop going to New York City and Boston. It's just, that's not going to happen. There's too much there. There have to be adjustments, as you said. You have to adapt and things, but it's what's there is still going to be a huge draw. What does your portfolio look like now? What do you have? Kind of.
Yeah, sure. We have. Sorry, I'm looking at checking my board. I don't know.
So much it's hard to remember.
Yeah, we have. It all depends, and I get this question a lot. It all depends on how you look at what that question can be very answered in different ways, right? So I'll give you kind of the breakdown. We have roughly 65 units right now that are stable. That are, when I say stable, I mean they're already in the management wing. Tenants are there. They're rented up and leased up. We have right now another 16 to 18 units under construction in some various capacity. They're either being built, they're going through the zoning process right now. so that's another 16 to 18, and another 10 to 13 units under contract right now to be built. So our goal is to have, roughly 100 units in the next 24 months over on that management side, stabilized and fully leased up and tenanted, all within the Boston area. And then we have a couple deals right now that we're working on for our personal portfolios. We're trying to do some things with Airbnb as we speak. We're trying to build up that rental, short-term rental portfolio between the two of us, and then a couple flips that we're working on as well.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, I think I honestly don't ask that question very often, like what's your unit count. I'm more just curious because you're in Boston. I think when people are, when you're looking at large multifamily and you talk about 100 units, sometimes that's one deal, right? But
right.
in Boston, that there's more of it happening, but like that's not really what's there. That you don't have those giant apartment complexes like you might have in the suburbs of Atlanta or something like that. It's more of these smaller things, and so I think
yeah. And if you do, they're institutional buyers. They're not. If you have 100 unit complex in Boston, 100 unit building in Boston, it's not it's Joe Smith that owns that. It's AIG, insurance owns that, or or they're, like I said, some type of portfolio management company. It's a large entity, a group. 100 unit complex is almost like owning like the Boston Celtics. It's like you need a full team of people that own that type of because I mean that's a lot of money, especially if you're sitting anywhere near any type of college campus or anything like that, or like a Brighton, Alston area where there's big money involved. And for your listeners, just to give you an idea of the type of money we're talking about, our typical rent here in our lowest price market, I would say in one of the least expensive neighborhoods, a 3-bedroom unit is going for almost $3,000. I would say $2,800 to $3,000. Some, in our higher price markets, those 3-bedroom units are going, $5,000 or $6,000 in like a Back Bay or something like that. Maybe even more. I mean, I've rented apartments during my, real estate days at $7,500 for, a 3 or 4 bedroom. So the rents here are crazy. There's definitely a lot of money to be made, but our typical buy is a 2, 3, or 4, most likely a 3 or 4, because 2s, the rents just don't justify the cost. And they're really difficult to hold on to. So most of our stuff is 3s. And throughout New England, and sorry to ramble on, but even in New Hampshire, Connecticut, Rhode Island, that New England van is known for the triple decker or the 3-family. I don't know who built them in 1910, but there was one developer who cleaned up and built all up and down the East Coast, or excuse me, the Northeast. But these 3 families are everywhere, and that's primarily what we focus on.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I think before I left Boston, I didn't really know. That's what I knew. It was that's what apartments were, right? It was these 3-family buildings that you were all stacked on top of each other. That's all I really knew for a long time. So no, that's very cool. Well, why don't let's switch gears a little bit and get to the part of the show where we sort of ask you the questions that I ask every guest, and you can each answer individually. If maybe there's some synergies there, but the first question for you is based on the name of the show being Know Your Why. And so I'll ask you each, what is your why? What's driving you towards success?
Ladies first.
Oh God, on the spot. My why, keep it simple. I want to, and we're talking about individually, right?
Right. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
The ability to be creative while in the process of generating wealth and helping others at the same time. It's amazing how you can do that while simultaneously helping other people do it with you.
Yeah. So
absolutely.
For me, it's changed over time. For me, Heidi's, I think, trying to be modest and trying. For me, it started off, I just wanted to get rich at first. I mean, I was kind of like, I Googled back then, I was like, how do people get rich? And I was like, the majority of people get rich either through the stock market or real estate. And I was like, stock market's not for me. I'm going to go into real estate. But I agree with her that I like the idea that you can wake up every day and do something different. I'm in a sweatshirt some days. I'm in, I'm going out and, doing construction some days. I'm on I'm sitting down having lunch with bankers other days. It's just something different every day, and it kind of keeps it interesting. My why now has changed a little bit as we, get closer to, 100 units in portfolios, and why I think I'm kind of more in line with Haiti, that helping other people. We do a lot around financial literacy as well. We started, I organize, and Katie's the co-organizer of Boston Wealth Builders, roughly 2,800 people, right now, investors locally in that group. And we do a lot of financial literacy courses, just teaching people about money management and everything else. So right now, I would agree with her. It's more about helping other individuals find financial freedom, find their place, in the, in this industry as well. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's great. Makes total sense. And I think that the evolution of, sort of why you're in this and what you're doing, yeah, sure, to some degree, it's got to start out with getting yourself comfortable and on the right track and everything. But then at some point you have enough money and you can, sort of shift gears and start to give back to other people. So I think it's makes total sense that the why would evolve over time.
Yeah.
All right, so here's one for you. Tell us something about yourselves that not everybody knows, maybe isn't common knowledge, whether that's a special skill or hobby, or something that will let the listeners know you a little better.
Yeah, I'll say I coach volleyball part-time, and I don't think a lot of people know that.
Cool.
Yeah.
I watch a lot of trash TV. Yeah, most people. A lot of 90 Day Fiance, a lot of Married at First Sight. I don't know, a lot of trash TV. Spend way too much time on Netflix. You probably wouldn't think of most people that are, doing something, anything. That's my kind of my downtime. So yeah, that's something most people probably wouldn't know about me.
That's there are levels of trash TV, and I think that's a
there are levels of trash TV.
Yeah,
I agree with that. There are certain levels to
it. I love that. Okay, so next question is how when people hear this and they want to maybe reach out, how would they get in touch with you? We'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, well, we're on social media as JJ Companies Inc. on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube channel as well. The easiest way will be to reach out to us via Instagram at JJ Companies. It'll have our contact info, phone number, email address right there.
Yeah, I would agree. We're on YouTube. I think it's the same thing, JJ or W Mandrell on YouTube. Follow our YouTube channel, subscribe. We're going to be putting out a lot of, good content in terms of following our journey and everything else. Same thing with Instagram. We're not too active on Facebook, but I would say Instagram and YouTube are probably the biggest two to follow us out there. And then, obviously, I think we're both on LinkedIn, Bigger Pockets, and all that other good stuff out there.
Okay, great. We'll put that stuff in the show notes. Last question for you both. What piece of advice would you give to someone who's maybe getting started out in real estate, and help them kind of get started and kind of reach the level of success that you have?
I would say just do it, like regardless of the fear or the hesitation that you might have, just do it. You'll be alive at the end of the day. You'll be good the next day. That's what I do that every day. I always tell Willie, I'm scared to do this. I don't know how to go about this, but I'm going to do it regardless. And having that mentality, it will get you to where you want to go. It'll challenge you. It'll make you realize the things that you need to work on and the things that will help you get to the next point. But until you take action, it'll be really hard for you as a person to understand where is it that you need to work to grow and get to the level of success that you want to.
Focus on the long term. This is my personal opinion. Too many people in today's society are very short-sighted. They want, Instagram is great. We're on it. We pay attention to it, but Instagram gives you and social media in general gives you this fake image of that everybody is doing everything and they get it and they want to put something in place and they get it tomorrow or next week or the month after. And it just doesn't work like that. You have Haiti hitting, the real estate scene, and, but people don't see years of work behind the scenes, years of, dedication and time and learning and reading and everything else behind the scenes. And the same thing with me. It's, when I'm out there, they don't see 4 a.m. wake ups, 5 a.m. wake ups. They don't see late nights. They see this image, this podcast episode, this whatever it may be, 65 units, whatever it may be. But you have to focus on the long term. You have to be able to put in the work now, and you will not get paid for it next week. You won't get paid for it next month. You probably won't get paid for it next year. But if you're able to see 5 years out, 10 years out, real estate's a great place to be. Real estate is always going to pay you. Not to drone on, but I tell everybody, I do not see a tech solution for real estate, a tech solution for needing a roof over your head. It's always going to be a great business, right? You're never going to get knocked out. It's not like the iPhone 12 is going to come in and replace the iPhone 11. It doesn't work like that in real estate. If you're a landowner, you're going to be successful. Buy now, wait, and be patient, and it'll pay off for you.
Yeah, that's fantastic advice. I think it truly is, this theme comes up a lot, but it truly is it's not a get rich fast, but it's a get rich for sure. Right. Yeah. It's nearly guaranteed. You have to screw it up really bad to not be successful, as long as you stick with it and give it time. It's really great piece of advice from both of you. So we'll go ahead and end it there. Thank you both for coming on. It was awesome. I really appreciate your story and your advice and perspective. And it was a lot of fun to talk about Boston. So
we appreciate you having us on.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, we'll sign off there. Have a great day.
I'd like to show you why knowing your why is the start of your journey. Without a strong why, it can be so difficult to reach your maximum potential. My name is Dr. Jason Balara, and every week I meet with real estate investors and mindset specialists that are taking action in order to build a life according to their own terms. We will break down what drives successful people and allows them to achieve at such a high level. If you are a professional wanting to break through, or simply someone that wants to hear an inspiring story, the Know Your Why podcast is made for you.